Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Today, with the voice of NASA, Mr. Hugh Harris. Welcome, Hugh, to our Hyatt Place studios here.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see a lot of people here that I haven't seen for a while.
Good. You were visiting with Karen Conklin, our executive director, who you've known quite a while, and Tom Usiak, who was our uh, program yesterday on Stay Curious. Tom, a friend who you credentialed on many a shuttle flight, was here to see you specifically today.
Well, it was great to see them, and one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that people like Tom don't really get the credit they deserve for keeping the people in our country informed, but also for the work that they do for NASA and the ability of NASA to do its job. Uh, the people, of course, are, the most important things in the world as far as I'm concerned, but they don't realize that there's so many things that are going on. And in the case of NASA, NASA is the government agency that relies more on public opinion than almost any other agency. And because it's one of those things that some people think is nice to do, and even though it's what keeps the country's technology at the forefront, it's not created specifically for that reason. And it's important that the public understand things, and people like Tom Usiak and all of the writers and photographers out there are the ones who keep people informed about the very important work that's going on.
Yes, they're good people. You, Mr. Hugh Harris, of course, public affairs officer, involved with that career over 40 years at NASA. Uh, you've been on the forefront of that, and you're so right. Think about the public apathy. Basically, stopped the last three Apollo moon flights that were bought and paid for and hardware built. Public opinion doesn't mean much when buying B-1 bombers and so forth. That doesn't mean anything, when it comes to national security and some other things. But yeah, that's interesting that public opinion has swayed NASA back and forth. You just look through your whole career, depending on what president we have, we're either going to the moon or Mars, or we're just going to stick in Earth orbit, type of thing. But Hugh, we've got the Artemis rocket on pad 39B, 11 miles from where we're sitting here in our big shout out to our Hyatt Place studios. There's the Hyatt Place Hotel that Robert and Dana will take care of you. We're going to have an event there we'll talk about here in a couple weeks that Hugh's going to be the master of ceremonies at. But speak about the Artemis rocket. We've been talking about this for over a decade, Hugh.
Well, I don't think of it as the Artemis rocket. Artemis is the program, but it's really the Space Launch System, which is the largest rocket that has been built, and of course is going to do a fantastic job of getting us back to the moon. And also there will be things that'll go farther out on the SLS. But I don't think that any of us who are in the space program thought for a minute that it would take this long between the last time we went to the moon and the next year or so when we will again go.
Well, 50 years next week when Apollo 16, the next to the last manned crewed flight to the moon, was launched, Apollo 16, with Ken Mattingly, John Young on that mission 50 years ago. with and he's passed away, and Charlie Duke, his one and only flight, walking on the moon. That was 50 years ago. Next week, April 13th, is the launch. The landing's on the 16th. It's really wild to think about. In many, no, the launch was the 16th. I mean, the landing was April 20th. Let me correct myself on that. But 42 years ago, you were involved with the publicity of John Young and Bob Crippen, a rookie, that were going to ride this rocket on our green screen back here. The first time America's ever tested a vehicle meant for humans without doing an unmanned flight first. So you were the voice of NASA for that historic launch 42 years ago, and we're going to relive a little about that with you. But is it the same trepidation, anticipation with the Orion launch, you think, as with the shuttle?
No, the shuttle was unique, and I give a lot of credit to John Young and, of course, Bob Crippen, who were the first to fly an untested human spacecraft into space. It's, as far as I know, even in the Russian program, that didn't happen that way. And John Young in particular is a very interesting person from the standpoint that he had, I think, 4 flights by that time, and had walked on the moon, and had been made the chief of the astronaut group. And when it came time to decide who's going to go on this flight, which, as I mentioned, is the most dangerous in a way that's come up yet, he said that he was the one, and he was the most experienced astronaut at that particular time, and to do that. And
so he actually made himself the commander, much like Alan Shepard made himself commander of an Apollo flight,
right,
as head of the office.
And we frequently think of him as somebody who doesn't say a whole lot.
Yeah.
Who is very subdued in the way that they talk. And as a matter of fact, I can see him a number of times sitting outside of the center director's office, waiting to go in and talk to him. And he was always just, he was there, but he wasn't doing anything that would draw your attention. But anyway, there was some trepidation on the part of both the president at the time and the vice president, Mondale, who was the head of the Space Council at that time, as to the dangers in flying people on an untested system. And they were suggesting that there be some kind of test before that happened, maybe to make sure that everything would go fine and that the whole system worked. But he looked at each of those things very carefully, and then quietly but firmly said, no, we're going to fly the mission the way that it's planned. The 2 alternatives that had been suggested were to do a return to launch site abort. And in a return to launch site abort, the rocket would be launched and would go until the solid motors had burned out. Mm-hmm. And then they would be jettisoned, and then it would return to land at the Kennedy Space Center. Another option was that they do an emergency abort to one of the overseas landing sites in Spain or in Africa. And he felt that both of those options were more dangerous than actually going and flying the primary mission, where the rocket just took them up into orbit, and they were able to make a circle of the Earth and come back at the appropriate time.
Yeah,
So-
just 3 circles, just 3 orbits, like John Glenn.
Yes.
A very, very, very short flight. No, 3 days I'm talking about. They were up there 2 days, yeah.
So
2
if
days, not
if
3
he
orbits,
had,
what I'm thinking of. From the
you
12th
know,
to the 14th.
if it hadn't been for him, I don't think that we would have flown the same way and had the same success. And Bob Crippen, who's one of my favorite astronauts, partly because when he became the center director, he made me a director.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But
The last 6
Bob-
years there.
Bob was a fantastic pilot before he got to the space program, and he went through a number of things that were very useful to learn about the capability of people in space prior to having been named to fly on the first shuttle.
Yeah, as a rookie, and we're going to see the crew, some pictures of them here in just a minute. Was Crippen handpicked by Young to be his pilot?
Well, I'm
You'd
pretty
think
sure
so.
he was.
Yeah.
The how astronauts got picked for flights always involved a number of people, but I'm sure that John Young was a primary proponent of that.
Well, speaking of hand-picked, a good segue. I have got Bob Crippen's hands right here. This is how our museum, as you know, started, with the handprints of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts over at Spaceview Park, and we got a few shuttle astronauts. There's your boss there. Put your hands on there, Hugh. See how you stack up to your old boss there.
Well,
He's 86 years old now. He was 44 when the shuttle launched there. But boy, this is heavy on there. We're going to see a picture of Cripp there in a minute. But that's his handprints. We have him over by his Smeat outfit that he wore in a altitude test for the Skylab. He was a Skylab test pilot there. So there you have a great introduction from Mr. Hugh Harris, NASA Public Affairs Office. He started in Cleveland. He's a Buckeye like me. Up there, holds that into your hand there. And these oral histories, as such, are made possible by an endowment from the Marie Louise G. West Endowment. We're grateful for them for giving us the money to buy our computer here, and show you this Streamlabs that is run by Marty Winkle, our Streamlabs engineer now. He went from an electrical engineer on the shuttle. He was an electrical engineer on the Apollo lunar module, and then Marty was a computer systems engineer on the Launch Process Service. So Marty,
More like a streamline operator.
and you're a Streamline operator, not an engineer. He's an operator there. And, of course, Marty being an Apollo guy, Hugh, he doesn't like hearing so much about that this Artemis SLS rocket is the most powerful, all right, because it's got 2 strap-on boosters on there. And I know Saturn V people will go down always saying that their Saturn V liquid-fueled 5 F1 engines, were a lot more powerful than this SLS. But the fact is, it's made to boost about 8 million pounds
well,
thrust on there.
and developing those engines that were on the Saturn V was a real advance in our knowledge about rocket engines. And the early ones had a problem with what was called combustion instability, and in that you didn't get an even combustion in the rockets, and which could have torn them apart.
Hmm.
And so there was probably a year or so of research that went into figuring out how to make them work properly. And it just happened that I was at the right place at the right time when it was happening, because the Lewis Research Center, where I started, was one of the research centers that worked on rocket engines, and had a big hand in solving the problem of instability.
Lewis Research Center up in Cleveland,
Right.
now renamed the Armstrong, correct?
No, the John Glenn.
Oh, John Glenn, yeah, John
Research
Glenn,
Center.
that's right. Yeah, the John Glenn native son there. But Armstrong, another Buckeye, another Ohio knot, about 24 Ohio knots, okay.
Well, he has a place named after him too.
He does too, yeah.
Out at the what used to be Dryden.
Yeah, what used to be Dryden, right, is now the Armstrong, and the what used to be the MSOB, or the Operations and Checkout, is now the Neil Armstrong Museum.
Right.
That was the hub for the astronauts.
Well, that was
Museum.
yeah.
Did I say museum?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I said museum. Neil Armstrong building there.
Well, it's the used to be the Operations and Checkout building, the O&C building,
Right.
and now it's the,
Before that was the MSOB, though.
yes.
Right. Anytime you can say that, that's an acronym I don't mind
SOB
saying.
and MSOB.
Yeah, from the SOB to the MSOB.
Yeah, Mark has a question.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, we got a question there from Mark Usiak.
Yeah, he wants to know if that was the pogo effect. Or something
No, that was another problem, and I think the pogo effect was with the solids, if I remember.
Well, no, that was a Saturn V where it was oscillating,
Well,
going
yes.
up in,
Oh, no,
in-
you're
in
right,
the
yes.
engine, and like a pogo stick, and that
Right.
was an amazing thing.
No,
Thank
that-
you, Mark Usiak, for watching. We just saw your big brother, Tommy Boy, was here and talking to Hugh. And we're glad everybody's watching us on YouTube, Twitch, Spotify. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe to us. It's important to our museum. Where else are you going to get a conversation live with Mr. Hugh Harris, the voice of NASA? He's going to be here at least once a month. We got 16 shuttles in the month of April. That's why we have Hugh here. We may have to have you back in the middle of the month to talk a little more about it. Marty, you got a question?
Robert Law has a question if you want to backtrack a little bit.
Sure. Robert Law's in Dundee, Scotland, watching us
Wow.
on a Tuesday evening.
He's asking about the wet test, the progress on the wet test on Artemis.
Oh, he's asking about the wet test on Artemis that didn't go exactly as planned yesterday. What's he say? Oh, he's asking
Just
about
asking
it?
about it.
Oh, did you hear the news? They had,
Well, yes, and apparently it involved the weather, although I haven't checked on it today. But the wet test is simply filling up the rocket with the propellants that it needs, and making sure that all of the systems that are involved with that work. So it's a wet rehearsal
yeah.
of what's going to happen when you actually fly it, and so hopefully I'll know more about it by
I think
next
the
time.
word was yesterday that they had a problem with one of the valves, the loading valves, and so they had to terminate the test where they go down. But that's why they're out there, to shake things down on that. And we'll try to give you a better report of that tomorrow when Stay Curious will be mostly about some space history and catch up on the shuttles that are launching left and right here in April. Thank you. Good to hear from you, Robert Law. He's been with us from the very beginning, and we really cherish our Stay Curious friends that have been with us now for 2 years. Let's see. Today's April 1st was Friday. I'm looking at our number on the board. This is our 535th episode,
Wow.
Hugh, that Marty and I have come up with. And for the most part, it's been a fun ride, and we've getting a lot of attention about this, like yourself, and we appreciate that. We're such a thrill to have national treasures like Hugh Harris come and visit us in our museum and be on Stay Curious to talk a little bit about their career and some things that only they can talk about. Marty, another question?
Yeah, for Mark Usiak, does you know why they decided not to go with the mobile service structure for SLS?
Do you know why they didn't want to go with the mobile service structure for SLS?
Right. No, I got the question, but I'm not sure. You know what the reasons were that the mobile service structure really went around the rocket as it was being carried out to the pad,
Mm-hmm.
and and had a hand in stabilizing it as well as it was moving. And I guess the reason must have been that it simply wasn't needed to be used that way.
Okay. Well, we'll look into that. Thank you for your question there, Mark. We also want to tease a little bit that on April 12th, the 42nd anniversary of STS-3, we're going to have this launch director, Mr. Jim Harrington. And Jim Harrington launched 22 shuttles in 1995, 96, and 97. One of the most ambitious 3 years of the entire program. All right. 7 launches in 2 years, 95 and 96, and 8 and 97. And 6 of them, I think, were missions to the Mir space station. So I talked to Mr. Harrington, and you're going to enjoy a conversation with him coming here on April 12th, which is next Tuesday, Marty. I got to be,
I think so, yeah.
don't have a calendar in front of me. And he's also going to be one of our launch directors. It's going to be at our golden anniversary of the dawn of the space shuttle era, where Mr. Hugh Harris is going to be our master of ceremonies, Saturday, April 16th, at the Hyatt Place in Titusville from 9 to 5, free admission. Marty is going to, and I are going to be bringing it to you live on as part of our extended Stay Curious broadcast. And we need to have a production meeting, Marty, to see if I think we should just start and stop them, and then redo each one so that they're each an individual program that you can watch on YouTube or Facebook instead of letting it go open mic and all for. Well, we turned the mic off because Lord knows what people are going to say around us. Because we're expecting a big crowd there. We have got a wonderful, we've got 3 launch directors, Mr. Harrington, we got Mike Leinbach, who launched the last batch of shuttles, and of course Bob Seek. And between the 3 of them, they launched 111 of the 135 space shuttles.
They want to mention limited seating.
Pardon me?
They want to mention limited seating.
Yes, there's going to be limited seating there, so get there early. We've got 2 astronauts are going to be there, Mr. Mike McCulley and Winston Scott are both going to be there. We've got Jay Harrington, Jay Honeycutt, his KSC director, is going to give a history of why we're doing this. And why are we doing it? Because the Nixon administration 50 years ago proposed it to the Congress, and they passed in April 1972 into law a $5.5 billion bill creating the Space Transportation System. That's what STS means, folks. And Hugh, what do you remember about that in 72? Much, you were just coming on the scene.
Well, I was, I'd been around for a while because I started in 63.
Okay.
But what it was trying to change from a once in a while launching of people to a regular sort of shuttle service. That's why it's called the shuttle, to go up whenever there's something to do. And originally, we thought of it as being quite frequent. People talked about 20 launches a year.
Oh, 2 or 3 a month I've seen
yes.
manifests for, yeah.
And of course, we never got to that point. The space shuttle was a lot more complicated to fly than was, I guess, desired at the beginning. Going to space is not all that easy, and there's a lot of wear and tear on the hardware that is used for that. And of course, that's one of the problems that caused us not to sort of fly up into space at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, putting people on a rocket, which then was only used once and fell into the ocean. The space shuttle was to overcome that so that you would be able to fly up there, come back, refurbish the spacecraft, and go again within a relatively short time.
And looking at this beautiful picture, the only thing that was not reused was the big external tank, the fuel tank. It had the liquid oxygen tank up here and the liquid hydrogen below it. And painted white there, the first 2 missions. And then Hugh, tell us about why they took the paint off of it. And then everyone knows it as the orange ET.
Well, the main reason was weight.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of weight that you carry means that if you carry more as far as the rockets are concerned, then you can only carry less inside the shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, the shuttle was looked at on a continuing basis for, how can we make it lighter? And some of the designs were sort of interesting. Some of the original ones envisioned an all-metal shuttle, which they decided was not as easy to do as it sounded like. But in any case, weight taken away from your propulsion system means more payload that you can put inside the
How much
shuttle.
weight did taking that white paint off save? Do you remember?
It was hundreds of pounds, but I've forgotten. 600 pops into my mind, but I'm not sure I'm
Well,
remembering.
Marty Winkles confirmed that with you there, 600 pounds. Hell, that's 3 people. Or, I mean, shoot, that's 3 people
Well,
that you saved there.
and
Or one of Darren over there, our education guy.
Well, and the
1.5 of him.
astronauts rarely, I think, broke 200 pounds.
Yeah,
so
right.
you could
Yeah,
have-
so that's significant. But it's easier to see the orange against the sky. I kind of was wondering why they wanted white to begin with. Did they? Because when it was delivered, it was orange anyway. That foam
Well,
type of thing. But
that's true. And I've forgotten now if there was any advantage to the orange. The other thing, though, that the paint may have done is help prevented pieces of the foam, which was the orange,
yeah,
from coming off.
that's what I kind of thought.
And that, of course, became a big problem.
Absolutely.
And led to the demise of the Challenger.
Which is interesting, Marty, that they never went back to thinking of how to put a coating on that would keep it, because there's that Flex Seal type stuff that you see.
Then you're putting weight back on.
Then you're putting weight back on, but some of them have been
Supposedly,
trimmed quite a
I asked
bit.
somebody that question, and the paint would not have
The
prevented
paint would not have stopped this stuff
it.
coming
Wasn't
off,
heavy
Marty
enough
said.
to prevent it.
Well, look at there, Hugh. 16 shuttles in the month of April were launched in the whole history of the 30-year launch history of the program. All right, including some very monumental missions there. We're not going to talk about all. We're going to talk about all of them throughout the month. Hugh specifically wanted to talk about STS-1, but we've got and these are in order of the date that we launched them: STS-6, Very important mission. Was the last 4 crew that we sent to space until the last shuttle flight of 135. All right, very interestingly there. STS-83 was cut short and then reflown because of a fuel cell problem. It has the exact same logo except they do it in red instead of blue. I think they did a couple days. You've got the 24th of this month, we're going to talk about the Hubble being deployed 32 years ago for the Hubble Space Telescope. Hugh, your press releases guaranteed it was going to last how long? 15 years maybe?
Yes, it was. I think that was the right number.
And it's been twice of that. And of course, the last upgrade was 12 years ago on it, interestingly enough.
Well, what's really sad is the fact that we don't have the capability for going back and servicing the telescope anymore. But hopefully that'll change in the
NASA
future.
doesn't, but perhaps one of these billionaires will want to fetch it, and bring it back to the Smithsonian or something. A lot of good, interesting missions there. Anything we're going to talk about STS-1 in the middle there. Hugh, and any of those others kind of strike your fancy? You were involved definitely in the ones in the 80s. Very important LDEF 41C was the satellite that had all of the paint and different types of materials on it there. Go ahead.
And LDEF stayed up there for quite a long time, and
longer than they wanted it to, and which was maybe a good thing. They got a good. Because of the Challenger accident, it couldn't be retrieved in the 1 year. Instead, it stayed up there almost 3.5 years.
Well, and the one thing that people sort of forget, we think about the vacuum of space, and although there is a vacuum, there's really a lot of things happening up there with the various types of radiation that is coming from not only our sun, but from outside of our whole solar system.
Yes.
Which has a pretty bad effect on a lot of materials. So LDEF was looking at, what were those effects? What was the amount of radiation? Also the amount of particles that solid particles that were coming by all of the time, and so it was learning over a very long period, as opposed to the short period that the space shuttle would have been there, for instance. That what was happening, and that was very important to the space station because it gave us more information on how do you design a space station that would be up there for 20, 30 years.
The Long Duration Exposure Facility is what LDEF is. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow on Stay Curious, because that mission also was the Solar Max repair, where astronaut Pinky Nelson took the manned maneuvering unit to try to capture it. It didn't really work out. They ended up capturing it with the arm and repairing it. That's tomorrow on April 6th. So of the 16 shuttles, 5 of them are launched in the first 6 days of the month. You got STS-6 there. 83 shares the 4th of the April 4th is the launch date. They're what are they? 14 years apart, though. Mm-hmm. Then we have 2 that are launched on the 5th, today's date in space history. Gamma Ray Observatory, a very important NASA. That was the second of NASA's great observatories launched. The first one, the Hubble. And then in a year later, they launched Gamma Ray Observatory. I heard pilot Ken Cameron was the astronaut of the day out at the Visitors Complex the other day. Does a very good talk. That was one. Do you remember that one, Hugh, where they had to do an emergency spacewalk on the Gamma Ray Observatory, and Jerry Ross had to go out and pull the antenna that didn't
that's
deploy
right. Yes.
on it. Jerry Ross, in the month of April, had 3 of his 7 missions. A lot of us know Jerry Ross. We'll talk about him in the month of April here. That's interesting. Of 7 missions, and he's tied with today's birthday boy, Franklin Chang Diaz. We'll wish him a birthday tomorrow. He's 72 today. He's got 7 space flights along with Jerry Ross. And they're actually technically tied with John Young for 7 launches. All right. Because John Young had 2 Gemini launches, 2 Apollo launches, 10 and 16 on the moon, and then he had 2 shuttle launches. But that Apollo 16, he had a 7th launch off the moon in the Grumman lunar module. All right, so that's kind of a trick question there. But John Young, by the way, John Young Parkway in Orlando, named after him. He grew up in Orlando. He's born in San Francisco, but he grew up in Orlando in there.
Well, he's always said Orlando was his hometown.
And we're going to see a couple pictures of him here in a minute. So also on the 5th, today in space history, was STS-131 was launched right there. On the 10th, that's Discovery. It's almost, I think it's next to last mission of Discovery would have been there. So a total of, how many astronauts did I add up for the month of April? 5 astronauts in April were flown twice. Nagel, Apt, Ochoa, Goodwin, 2 women, Ochoa and Goodwin, and then Cameron were launched twice in the month of April. And why did I not add up all the astronauts? I've got that added up somewhere. 95 astronauts launched in the month of April on 16 shuttles, 11 of them women. All right. So I like little facts like that, and I love sharing them. It took me a couple hours to put all this together. Okay, 2 of my favorite mission patches, 100, because it has the outline of a EVA helmet.
Yes,
STS-100 is the outline of a helmet in space, reflecting the shuttle and the Earth in its visor. And then the last shuttle launched in the month of April is STS-60 or 51B, and of course it's got the constellation Pegasus in there for Skylab, and I think that's a beautiful patch. STS-1's a beautiful patch too, but look at what myself and my executive director Karen Conklin have come up to amaze you. A shuttle chart with the left-hand side is each shuttle, okay, like STS-1 launched on the 12th is the 9th shuttle launched in the month, date-wise, okay, all the way up to STS-51B launched in 1995, that one that was the 3rd Space Lab mission up there. But why I did this, Hugh, is that we can see on the 12th, and of course I kind of use it as my own cheat sheet to look at things quickly. If you look down at the bottoms, the date on April 12th, you have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 space shuttles are orbiting the Earth in history on April 12th. And we'll find out what's the date in history of the year that has the most shuttles orbiting the Earth. Okay, is it going to be 7 or are there more? Plus, are there any dates, Hugh, of our 365-day calendar that no shuttles were orbiting the Earth?
That would be interesting.
We'll figure out if along the way there. So.
Well, one thing I need to ask you though is, do you think that April is really a good day to be launching a space shuttle, or for that matter, anything, because there were 16.
Well, I don't know. There's 16 launches. Now, I'm going to take the bait there, Hugh.
Okay.
Is April a lucky month or an unlucky month to be on a shuttle and taking a ride to space?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it.
All right.
They all did their job and came back safely.
Absolutely.
So that part is really, really good. What was interesting to me when I first looked at this was that there were 16. There were the 16 shuttles, but there were 15 times that those shuttles were delayed of getting off the ground and into space. And it was for a very, variety of reasons. And what it does is it shows how difficult it really is and how, technically,
challenging the whole system
challenging,
was, yes.
to do that. For instance, the reasons for the shuttles being delayed or postponed
Okay.
are a wide range.
Well, here's our
which-
16 shuttles that they all weren't launched on the day they were planned. You share that with us there.
Well, of course, on STS-1, that was a 2-day delay that occurred, and I was sitting there doing the commentary, getting all ready to get down to the nitty-gritty of 3-2-1 launch, when something went wrong with the computer system, and we talked about George Page was the launch director at that time, and he had made a rule that I could not talk to anybody else in the firing room during the countdown, and I tried to get people outside, but was not able to figure out exactly what the problem is to announce it, other than the fact that the computers were not working together as they were supposed to.
We'll see a picture of Paige here and the crew. We haven't even got to that yet, but Marty had a comment real quick.
Yes.
From Tom Celentano, Ellen Ochoa had 2 launches on April 8th in '93 and 2002.
She certainly did. That's thank you for pointing that out, Tom Celentano. How interesting that is that on STS-56, because I can go check it out right here, Tom, and I put some notes there. The 6th shuttle of the month in 1993-56 was an Atlas II, an atmospheric lab with 5 crew, and I got Ochoa there. And then STS-110, she was on the same date, launched in 2002, 9 years later, Ellen Ochoa, and she became the first Hispanic and the second woman director at Johnson Space Center. I would love to meet her someday, Ellen Ochoa.
Absolutely.
You know, you've had dealings with her. Thank you, Tom, for pointing that out. What an interesting bit of space history there.
Well, one of the things that was interesting about that flight was that it was the first time that the shuttle had flown and at a nighttime, and
Which flight was that?
56.
56, okay, in 1993.
And as it went up, the people who were on board, the crew, remarked that it was even better at night because of the way that the lights from the engines reflected off of the cloud layer.
Oh, wow.
And was more spectacular than a daytime launch.
That was Ken Cameron's command on there, and Oswald was the pilot, and Cockrell and Foale. That was Foale's second trip to space. I think he's got 6, and Ochoa was a rookie on that one there. Tell us about a couple of those delays there. That you said there was 15 delays, and give us kind of how hard it was to always do this. You're sitting there as the voice of NASA, ready, like you said, to do your countdown and T-minus 2 minutes, and then or whatever, and then all of a sudden, oops. What were some of the other flights delays there?
Well, of course, you might guess that weather was a problem in a couple of cases. But for instance, on STS-6, for instance, there were cracks in an engine part that required them to replace the engines.
Wow.
There was
Good to find that out before they launched, for sure.
of course, yes, and insulation.
That was in '83, so that's the 6th flight, the maiden flight of Challenger. So they were using some of the old engines that were on the first flights of Columbia,
Right.
1 through 5.
And I'm not positive I'm remembering properly, but I think the engines were changed before the flight actually went. I can check that.
Yeah, I got a little
but,
note here. All 3 main engines were removed while the shuttle was on the pad.
Right.
They repaired them. The number 1 main engine was replaced. They put the other 2 back in there. But then it says also they're ready to go. They got the engines fixed, and then guess what, Hugh? They had a severe storm that contaminated the tracking data and relay satellite on the pad.
That's right.
So they had to pull it back in anyway. And then on April 4th, it proceeded as scheduled. What were
Well-
some other things that caused problems?
Well, for instance, there was insulation on a water coolant line on STS-83, and that would have caused a problem in space. They felt if it were allowed to go, because the water would have frozen, and then of course it wouldn't have been able to cool the parts that it was for. But there were things like valves. There was a high pressure pre-burner discovered on an engine at the last minute. Leak in
On 59 there, you're saying that on the 9th, the launch of the 9th there, that's Sid Gutierrez, the commander of that. Sid is involved with a local space company called Via Space. We're anxious to partner with them when they're ready. Were any of those down to the SSMEs that ignited? Any harrowing where the main engines ignited at 6.6 seconds, Marty?
6.3, that would have been at a board.
Yeah, that'd have been an abort. Okay,
Right.
okay, instead of a scrub. Okay,
They,
good
well,
point there.
and
So there were none in April.
no, and there were a number of occasions when this came up. As you know, the area that the shuttle was going to fly over was designated by the Coast Guard as a place where there shouldn't be any boats because of the possibility of something going wrong and dropping onto those boats.
Right.
Well, in at least one case in April, there was a case where a boat got in the area on STS-1, and they had to wait until the boat got out of it. What happened when that was discovered is that the Coast Guard helicopters would fly out there, and if they couldn't get the attention any other way, they'd use a big loudspeaker to say, you know, you're in a restricted area,
Oh,
you've
really?
got to get out. And of course, that's, you know, pretty expensive. If you have to delay a launch, you're talking about really $100,000 or more of cost to going back and redoing that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Interesting. 15 times we've had some sort of delays at the launch pad on these 16 missions launched in there, and we're gonna on our chart here, the bar is how long it was in space. Again, you got the date timeline on the bottom. The left line is the left bar is just the number of shuttles. All right, for that number of the month. So, one of the most ambitious months of the year, April. April flowers, spring, May shuttles, I guess, or more. In May, I know there's 10 because we're going to do this every month, and we might put this together in some sort of little pamphlet or something down the line. So, hope you enjoy our little shuttles of the month. It gives us an opportunity to brag about our tremendous American resource that the space shuttle was, and its legacy lives on today in the International Space Station that was largely built by 35 missions to the shuttle. Here is, of course, John Young and Bob Crippen there on the right. Young was 51 years old in 1991. And there is Crippen, who is 44, no spring chicken for a rookie, for sure. And Crippen was a man-orbiting laboratory astronaut, come way through the Air Force ranks.
that's right.
In there. But there he's kind of laughing at the old man getting in the basket on top of the pad. This was the rescue basket that is one of the world's greatest zip lines, I guess.
Well, it may have been the prototype for
yeah,
zip lines.
exactly. But look at John, 51 years old, kind of feeling probably a few little aches and pains. Is we got to get in this thing, Crip, on there. So
Well, I can't imagine Cripple laughing at him, though.
Oh, you can't?
He was the boss.
Yeah,
John
right.
Young.
Ultimate respect there. And there they are inside the classic picture of both of them. They're actually on ejection seats. Speak to that, Hugh. That the first 4 flights of Columbia were purely experimental flights, with them sitting on Blackbird SR-71 ejection seats.
Well, and
That neither one hoped they would ever use.
well, that's right. But on the other hand, they were only good for a very, very short period, because once you got, up very high, they would have had a problem
Exactly.
in coming down.
Oh, all
and-
kinds of problems. One where they're actually going to shoot out the roof of this thing,
That's right.
where those control panels were supposed to blast out, and then you got these solid rocket boosters on the side for 2 minutes that are burning. And John Young, I've heard him say he just thought he'd have been a marshmallow, because how were they not going to hit those SRBs?
Well, that's right.
Quite,
Now,
quite a,
one of the things that's interesting about that picture
mm-hmm.
is there is more than 2,200 switches and displays that are in the cabin of those early shuttles.
How many, Hugh Harris, switches and displays?
More than 2,200.
2,200. I always wondered that. Wow.
I stopped counting at that point.
Did you really?
No, that
Was enough to feed the press pool's curiosity.
There were, that was, I think, about twice as many as there were on Apollo in the Apollo command module.
Did not know that. Staying curious.
The
here,
other
Hugh
thing
Harris.
that is curious is that you'd say, well, how did they know what to do? Well, they took with them instruction books. There was 63 pounds of instruction books that came with the shuttle and that they had access to
63 pounds of instruction books that they have. There they have a couple pinned up there in front of them. No wonder they need to get that 600 pounds of paint off the external
right.
tank so they can have their manuals with them.
Yeah.
Well, I have seen some of those manuals, and it is amazing. But you know what? It's just follow the next thing that you have to do in the timeline, right?
That's right.
It's just because everything is on a precise timeline.
Well, the
That's
most
the problem.
the most important thing is
What Marty say?
to solve the
There's a
problem.
problem.
That's not what?
Not if there's a problem.
Oh, not if there's a
Yeah.
problem. Of course, yeah.
Well, and
Then they
that,
grab another the problem procedure book.
right,
Yeah.
you know, what do you do
Yeah,
if this
thanks,
goes
Marty.
wrong?
Marty, question, comment?
Yeah, I got two questions from Dave Stanges. One, have you ever been able to discover what day had the most U.S. astronauts in space at one time?
Dave Stange's asking what day has the fewest astronauts in space at one time?
No, most.
Oh, the
What
most.
had the most U.S. astronauts in space?
We're going to figure that out, Dave. But yeah, if we have 7 astronauts orbiting the Earth on April 12th, for example, on my sheet here.
Well, you
I
have
can add up real quick how many astronauts there are.
well.
I
also-
think there was. I think when Marty and I were doing it old school way, I think there's a day where there was over 55 human beings orbiting the Earth on that specific day. You got 7 shuttles. If they had an average of 5, that's 35, and you know some of them had 7. So
Well,
good question, Dave.
remember the space
Yeah.
station. You
Right.
You have to add in those.
Exactly.
And if the Russians have anybody in space, doing something else.
And we've got 3 Chinese orbiting the Earth right now.
That's right.
One Chinese
Mhm.
woman and 2 men. Okay, Marty.
Okay, Mark Isiak, did you ever get to sit inside a real orbiter?
Mark Usiak.
Oh
Are we gonna have to limit him to 3 questions a show here?
no,
Or not.
I think.
Did you ever sit inside an orbiter, Hugh?
Yes, but very, very briefly.
Commander's side or pilot's side?
It was been on the commander's side.
Yeah. Why briefly? You're the PAO.
Well, because you weren't supposed to.
POA, I mean.
I mean, you wanted to keep out any contamination.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who thought that public affairs people were contaminants.
Yes. Well, that's right. We're part of the news journalism. That's right. Yeah,
Well-
they did. We were never yellow journalism. You can't do that with the
No.
shuttle. But no. But good question there. Did you ever get inside of a Apollo or Mercury
No, I
in
didn't.
there just as for fun or?
Well, I could have on one that had come back, but I just didn't usually do that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Well, I kind of know what you feel like because I actually slipped John Glenn's hard hat on that we have in our case in here and
yes.
took a selfie of me with that. And I may have had my hand in one of the EVA gloves that we have around here.
Mhm.
It's hard to resist, you know.
That's right.
You're not. You don't want to abuse your privilege of being in the media, but I've been in the media a long time, and you know I like going in the back door and being ushered into the with my camera. You know, where's the governor at? He wants to see me because I got the camera. You know.
Well, the media should experience some of those things so they can do their reporting properly.
Yeah.
But as far as the public affairs people, not so much.
Not so much. Well, we're having a great conversation winding down here with Mr. Hugh Harris, the voice of NASA. He really has embraced our museum and enjoys coming. At least I think you enjoy it.
Well,
Coming here
yes,
once a
of course.
month is the 3rd month we've had you to talk about the shuttles of the month. And if you want to come back one day and continue talking about them, we'll love to do that. Wanted to show you some of the memorabilia and a little bit of for Hugh. There is Hugh rocking his mustache and sideburns there that you were known for a little bit during the time. And this is Mr. George Page, one of NASA's, well, what can you say? One of the premier leaders up there with Rocco Petrone, T.J. O'Malley, of course, Mr. Debus, and over the whole center for 12 years or 10 years. So he's one of the big shots there. Tell us a little bit about Mr. George Page and his awesome responsibility of launching the first space shuttle. This was
Well-
after the launch, or where was this taken, Hugh? What was the occasion for that?
Well, I think this was at a press conference. One of the things that we had to do. We had more than 2,000 press here for the first shuttle flight.
2,000, wow.
And we obviously didn't have a room to put them in, so we had to do press conferences outside.
This is typewriter days with telephones, no
Oh,
cell
yes.
phones. Take us back to the dark ages. Okay, this is of course the shuttle built on technology, launched in 1981. The shuttle technology was really 1970s.
Well,
In there. So sorry to interrupt you there, but I wanted to emphasize to some of our people under 40, this is real primitive times. Okay,
well,
a lot of tape recorders in your face, right? A lot of people
well, that's right.
would tape things and go back and listen to what you had to say to get it right.
I still have a tape recorder.
Oh, do you? Good.
And I have a lot of tapes that I need to transcribe. But anyway,
do.
I've sort of forgotten your question. Well, one of the things.
This was at a press conference.
Yeah,
and
we
Mr.
were.
Page there. Was that the launch or landing?
No, this probably was the launch, I would guess. Now, and that's because for the landing, it didn't occur
at Edwards,
at KSC. But we were really fortunate that left over from the Apollo period was a huge shell with 300 and some seats in it, and tables that, continuous tables that we could have the press sitting in. So we had a place to accommodate a lot of press there. But when you talk about 2,000, that doesn't fit into 300 seats. But we had to have our press conferences outside because there simply wasn't any place to put them inside that was big enough. And that's where I got sun poisoning on my nose.
Oh, wow.
Sitting out doing press conferences outside.
What a headache for you to put together, knowing that you had to do this and all. And,
Well, I had a lot of help, and there we had tremendous people who were working out there, throughout the years, and I wouldn't trade any of them, because they all were important.
Well, we saw one of them work in press. I had aid at the establishment of John Zarella yesterday there at Cape Canaveral. John, a CNN reporter, and he's agreed to come on and stay curious and share a little of his career. But he said hi to you, Hugh. He saw the schedule that we're doing for our golden anniversary of the Apollo program, and hopefully John Zarella will show up and say hi to you there.
Well, I hope he does. He is one of the good guys.
Well, there is one of the pictures that you disseminated of the wonderful launch there as a NASA worm logo at the top, and you see those numbers in the middle at the top there denoted some importance that these were sort of an internal picture given to VIPs and so forth with the red letters and numbers, correct? And but you might have been handing these out to some of the reporters.
Well, when you say VIPs, we considered everybody a VIP.
Okay.
And it's a matter of fact that some people got in trouble not considering them all VIPs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Treating
everybody equal as a guest, like we've all become to learn here in our society.
Everybody is important.
Good. Even those USIAC brothers?
Oh, even them.
Even
yes.
them when you credentialed those guys?
No, they're tremendous photographers.
They are. We're blessed just like to have you embracing our museum and stay curious. We're so glad to have partners like them that care about what the era that we're trying to preserve here. There is that white external tank as it was jettisoned and looking all dirty and everything, and very important data there to see how the scorch marks were, how this whole thing fared up to orbit. Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of analysis over that. People were given this is an acrylic, embedded in there is a piece of the shuttle tile given to space workers. This happened to be an Eleanor Durbing. This was in one of our auctions. I believe these items, that is the black area up there at the top, is the piece of shuttle tile that was given.
Well, I think that is a.
That's a JSC token there, not a KSC.
Yeah, so everybody did not get it.
Marty says everybody did not get it.
Yeah,
That's a JSC actually. Christopher, who's been the director out there at the JSC?
Chris Kraft, are you thinking of, or?
Yeah, well, Chris Kraft. Yeah, Chris Kraft was the director at that time out there, right?
Yeah, see, that's very, very early in the
Any
program.
rate, just to kind of some of the memorabilia that was shared with some of the workers out there. This is a $200 or $300 item in an auction, and there's a flag that was flown on STS-1. Hugh, you said you have such a flag.
Yes, and that's, one of the things that you think, well, I really shouldn't leave it on the wall because it's going to fade. On the other hand, you'd like to see it.
Yeah. And on the back of these, the glue they use to adhere them is kind of soils the paper behind it there. One of the other is this coin that is a $30 to $50 coin, and when you have the paperwork that was given with you, it's even more. Thank you for your contribution toward making the world's first orbital flight of Space Shuttle STS-1 possible. We would like you to have this memento made in part of metal taken from the Columbia, is what it says there. The Columbia, and it was flown in space, so that's kind of a cool memento to have.
Well,
And
one of the things I'd like to comment on the other part of the other face, you can see the signatures of Bob Crippen and John, and the thing that I think is so nice about both of them, I was looking at the coin, but there it's the same also, is that you can actually read their names. They never became that pretentious that they would have an indistinguishable type of autograph.
Yeah, that isn't. And
and
John Young's J is, very. You're right, a moonwalker, and a lot of people want his autograph and so forth, and he took the time, as Bob Crippen did too. And Bob Crippen has been a very big help to our American Space Museum and the U.S. Spacewalk of Fame Foundation, which is our parent nonprofit, when they were building Spaceview Park. He was certainly involved with our godfather, Charlie Mars,
Oh, yeah,
and did a lot of stuff for us over the years. Thank you, Bob Crippen, for all you have done for the American Space Museum. And at 86, he's kind of, had enough limelight, I'm told, through Charlie, our godfather, and has declined to be involved in some things now, but, that's his discretion there. So John Young's autograph is worth $400 or $500. Of course, Neil Armstrong is the worth 1,000 or more on anything that you have a Neil Armstrong on. But you know who commands more money per autograph?
I have no idea.
The late Krista McAuliffe. You find an autograph on Krista McAuliffe, it'll usually even draw more money than an Armstrong.
Well, that of course has to do with the amount of them.
Exactly. Marty's going to bring me over here, all of our fans that have been watching our show here. Oh, wow.
Wow.
We've got, of course, Mark Usiak, Robert Law, Pam Shivik. Thank you for watching. With Mr. Hugh Harris here, Cynthia Rossi, who's a space worker, Ophelia Sauterel's watching in Normandy, France. We got Earl Simmons, Dave Stange. Thank you, Dave. Donna Rosendorf. See if you know anybody that you know there. Tom Celentano. Thank you, Tom, for supporting our museum. Jason Crisafulli. Christopher Mick, he is tuning in from Colorado Springs at the 37th Annual Space Symposium that's going out there.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Christopher Mick was in our museum a couple of weeks ago, and I got a picture I haven't put up there. Larry Pushkar has got his wife Pam and mother Felicia watching. All right. We've got a triple header there with the Pushkars there. John Mowand and Esau Now. Thank you, Esau, for watching us, and all of you for staying curious. Wanted to mention the patch. When you see a decal, sometimes they were crew patches that people flew to space on their arm. This is such a crew patch. It's on. You want to know all about patches? Go to crewpatches.com. And this has got yellow exhaust that turns to gold, that turns to orange, that turns to a deeper orange. There's 4 colors there on this patches there.
Mm-hmm.
And you look in the plume, and that's one of the first things you look on the STS-1 patches. Is it showing 4 distinct colors like this one does there? And such a crew patch can be worth up to $300 or $400, but most fall in the $100 to $150 range. But you're looking for the 4 distinct colors: yellow, pale orange, then 2 shades of red in the plume there. So, cool thing to look at. There is Mr. John Young later in life and Bob Crippen. This was taken about 12 years ago when STS-135 last mission flew. And over John Young's shoulder there is, I'm blanking out there. That's Ferguson, Chris Ferguson. And behind him is Sandy Magnus. They're going to be inducted in the Astronaut Hall of Fame in June. And then on the far left over by Crippen is Doug Hurley, who was the commander of our Crew Dragon demo, the first SpaceX crewed launch. And the other gentleman that was on STS-4 there, I'm going to have to look it up real quick. I mean STS-135, which is the Walheim. Yeah, Walheim was the astronaut on that. And like we mentioned, STS-6 launched today in space history in 1983, was the last 4-person launch until STS-135 in 2011, the final flight of Atlantis, which is there beautifully at our Atlanta Center Kennedy Visitors Complex. I was out there over the weekend. It's just such a thrill just to sit there and just look at that gorgeous reusable spacecraft out there. Hugh Harris, thank you very much. Hyatt Place sponsored our program today here at our Hyatt Place studios inside the American Space Museum right here in downtown Titusville. Hugh, thank you so much for another great program. I'm sure our friends out there learned a lot, and happy to hear you so intelligent and vibrant at the tender age of 89. We wanted people to know, because you don't pull any punches.
Well, I plan to get older.
In fact, not only does he plan to get older, Marty, he wants a 10-year contract on Stay Curious, so he's guaranteed to get a little bit older. So we're going to get. Thank you so much, Hugh.
Oh, good to be
You're a
here.
great friend of the museum and friend of mine. Thank you for being there when I need to talk to you about stuff. And we're just so thrilled that you want to be part of our museum and share so freely here. Anything to put a button on the April flights?
Well, I just think that, everyone is important, and I'm not sure that I think it makes it sound a little bit like all of those flights took place in 1 month.
Right.
when they were stretched over a period of many, many years.
That's right, from 1981 to actually 2010, 131.
Well, and the important thing is that we need to stretch the number of flights over the next 100 years or so.
That's right. That's what it's all about, is And by golly, the billionaire entrepreneurs are leading the way to do that.
Well, I'm proud of them because that's exactly what the philosophy was when NASA and NACA before that was formed, that the government do the things that are not economically viable at the time, but as soon as they become economically viable, then private industry should take over. And of course, the various companies have always been involved in building the hardware, and so the knowledge that comes from them is immediately usable in private industry, and that is the genius of the American system.
And it worked with the aviation system. Just short 20 years after the Wright brothers in 1903, you had Pan Am and TWA flying people to their business destinations here in America. So we hope it keeps going full throttle. We got trying to get a launch off Friday with a private crew, and then April 20th is the date for the next Crew 4 going to space. So Hugh, again, thank you very much for all you do to help us here at the American Space Museum. Marty, a great episode, 533 episodes under our belt now, Marty. I think we're getting it down pretty good. We'll be back. I'm Mark Marquette, and we'll be back tomorrow with some more space shuttle history and a few astronaut birthdays to bridge the space between us. Thank you very much.